It started with a community forum in the West Australian town of Bunbury on Sunday.
Every time the no case raises one of their arguments, if you start pulling it apart, you get down to base racism. I'm sorry to say it, but that's where it lands. Or just sheer stupidity.
That's Professor Marcia Langton, one of the nation's most eminent Indigenous leaders and a co-designer of the Voice to Parliament. The local paper, the Bunbury Herald, owned by Seven West Media, declared on its front page,
"Racist or just stupid? Voice to Parliament no voters are siding with either racism or stupidity," Professor Marcia Langton told a referendum forum in Bunbury on Sunday.
By question time on Tuesday, it had blown up, with the opposition's Susan Ley asking Indigenous Affairs Minister Linda Burney for her thoughts.
I want to say this very clearly. I call on everyone involved in this referendum to act respectfully and with care for their fellow Australians. We are a great country. We are enhanced by listening to a diversity of views and opinions. And fundamentally, the Voice is all about the act of listening.
Langton says that, by racism and stupidity, she's referring to the tactics of no campaigners, not no voters themselves. This issue is ultra hot. The Yes campaign has been trying to avoid making the referendum about racism.
So in a spirit of generosity and optimism, vote yes. With hope for a better future, vote yes on October 14. Thank you.
Last week, Langton's fellow Yes campaigner Noel Pearson told the Australians' Great Voice debate that respectful engagement with undecided and soft no voters is key to success.
We've got to listen respectfully to those people who have reservations or questions or concerns. We have to answer their questions. We've got to deal with them in good faith.
But Langton herself is a forthright elder with a firm view that racism is out there. Here she is at last week's National Press Club address.
As a descendant of the Yiman people who were massacred in the hundreds over decades of conflict, raised in Queensland under racist laws, and now in my 70s, it is clear to me that the winds of change blowing across our continent now are our last hope of surviving as the first peoples with any of our laws, cultures and languages intact.
And at a University of Queensland event in July.
The surge of racist nonsense is confined to a minority of Australians. Ordinary Australians are thinking, yes, of course I'm voting for the Voice, and that would be, say 48, 49%. Then there's the hard no voters, and I'm hoping that they're about 20%, and they're the ones who are spewing the racism.
Marcia Langton has no formal role with either the Uluru Dialogue, which is one strand of the Yes campaign, or with Yes 23. She's very much her own person and always has been. I think she likes it like that.
Paige Taylor is the Australian's Indigenous Affairs correspondent.
But she has been a strong advocate for the Voice, and she did a lot of work on what a voice could look like for the coalition government. That was really careful work that she did with Tom Calma. And throughout all of that, she had detractors too, because here she was working on a legislated voice when the Uluru purists wanted a voice in the Constitution. So she's quite an interesting figure in that she has upset people all through her career on all sides of politics, actually.
Langton's lifelong dedication to Indigenous recognition and equality has been vital in bringing the Voice to a referendum. But slow progress has also been a source of immense frustration for her. And that frustration is bubbling to the surface in these all-important weeks as Australians prepare to vote on October 14. That's in contrast to a softening on Pearson's part. In the early days of the debate, Pearson publicly criticised No campaign leader, Senator Jacinta Nampijinpa-Price, for her position.
Jacinta's a very compelling figure, but she's caught in a vortex. This has been a campaign in the making over the last 3 years, and their strategy was to find a black fella to punch down on other black fellas.
The senator strongly objected to this. Now, Pearson has toned his language right down. So how does the Yes campaign balance the strong views of its most high-profile backers with the risk of scaring off voters?
I think this is very hard for the Yes campaign because we know, if we're being candid, that there is racism in this country. That's just a fact. Warren Mundine has spoken very candidly and quite movingly about that. He's spoken about the abuse he has received. And we do know that some of the people on the Yes side have received some pretty awful stuff. There are reasons that Marcia Langton doesn't talk about her life in a very open and public way. She has for a long time been subjected to the sort of abuse and threats that no one should have to put up with. So this is an extremely tough topic. I think the Yes campaign understands very well that every racist person is probably going to vote no, but every person who votes no is not a racist. They embrace that, they know that. They know there are a lot of fair-minded people who've got questions about The Voice, and they don't want to offend these people because they know that their hearts are in the right place. They really just want to make a good decision on referendum day.
It's been suggested that the Prime Minister should distance himself from any suggestion that race is a factor in the lead-up to the referendum. So how does Anthony Albanese, who's hitched his job to enshrining The Voice in the Constitution, handle this twist?
I suspect the Prime Minister wants to stay disciplined on this, and his approach in the past few weeks has been that this is not about politics, and although he supports The Voice and we're only having a referendum because that's what Labor had agreed to do, The Voice is not a Labor concept. And in order to drive that message home in the last weeks of the campaign, I think he understands he needs to do business as usual and not devote himself to The Voice as if he is a Noel Pearson or a Marcia Langton or a Megan Davis.
Coming up, how the No campaign plays the racism debate. In Question Time on Tuesday, not long after Indigenous Affairs Minister Linda Burney addressed Langton's controversial comments about no campaign tactics, Attorney General Mark Dreyfus shifted the focus to opposition leader and prominent No campaigner Peter Dutton.
This question from the Leader of the Opposition shows entirely on full display his role as the leader of the misinformation and disinformation campaign that is symptomatic of the No campaign.
So, should the No camp use the last sitting day of Parliament before the referendum, that's today, to refute the suggestion it's being driven by racism?
I think the No campaign has very cleverly played on a lot of people's fears. The details that have come out about what volunteers are being encouraged to say in their phone calls for the No campaign suggest that they are aware of people's fears, and that's a deliberate tactic to get people to feel a certain way, perhaps fearful, by telling them, I have heard the voices about reparations, or I have heard The Voice will try to abolish Australia Day. These are the sorts of things that I suspect Marcia Langton was responding to when she spoke on Sunday. I spoke to Ken Wyatt, the former Indigenous Australians Minister, this week, and he himself did not use the word racist, but he did use the word stupid when he was talking about some of the tactics and the messages coming out of the No campaign. When I asked him for an example, he said that he was in Melbourne this week. Cultural groups were being told that if the Voice succeeds, they won't be able to use their land that they already own and they won't be able to go to the beach. These are extreme claims, and Mr White, who's quite a moderate speaker and always very measured, called them flat out stupid. So I think there is a belief in the Yes campaign that No is saying some pretty wild stuff in order to upset people and make them frightened.
Opponents of the Voice, by and large, say they don't believe it's an adequate solution to the complex challenges being faced by Indigenous Australians living in remote communities. They see it as another layer of bureaucracy on top of an already impenetrable system. Polling has also shown voters inclined towards the No side are concerned a Voice would be divisive. But it's not yet clear how the No campaign plays out over the next 4 weeks.
I think it's really hard to know what they're going to do. They have been pretty guarded about their techniques. They're not doing a lot of door knocking as far as I can tell. There's been some lettered box drops, but it seems so far it's mostly phone calls and text messages. And those text messages that I've seen are pretty vague. They repeat a key concept of the No campaign: if you don't know, vote no. And there's not a lot of detail. It's that broad idea that this is mysterious and divisive.
This furore is happening just over 4 weeks before the referendum takes place. Recent Newspoll data shows that support for the Voice has fallen to just 38%, while just over half of voters surveyed, that's 53%, say they'll vote no.
4 weeks is a long time in a campaign. I think it would be a very confident person who would declare this finished now. I know the Yes campaign is very disciplined. Inside Yes 23 and inside the Uluru Dialogue, the people who are working daily, talking to Australians, running those meetings where you can ask any question you want, those people are very focused on the key messages that they agreed to some time back, and they're not interested in conflict. They want to present themselves as all about hope, love and unity.
Paige Taylor is The Australian's Indigenous Affairs correspondent.